The morning sun over Kandahar was already merciless, painting everything in pale gold and dust. Inside Forward Operating Base Sentinel, soldiers moved in rhythm, boots thudding, engines roaring, radios crackling. It was organized chaos, the heartbeat of war. And in the middle of it, unnoticed by most, worked Sergeant Emily Carter, the quiet tech who kept the whole system running, though no one ever seemed to notice. Her workspace was a small, shaded corner of the communications tent, crammed with tangled wires, humming transmitters, and half-disassembled drones. She sat cross-legged on the floor, hands gloved and steady as she soldered a circuit back into place. Sweat dripped down her temple, but she didn't mind the heat. Precision had always been her comfort zone, something she could control in a world where almost nothing else could be. "Hey, Carter," a voice called out. It was Corporal Mason, one of the infantry guys, his tone half-teasing. "Got any of those magic wires to fix my radio again? Or do I gotta bribe you with coffee this time?" Emily looked up, offering a polite half-smile. "Try not dropping it next time," she said softly, plugging the connector in and testing the frequency. The radio crackled to life instantly. "There, you're good." "Thanks, Tech Queen," Mason said with a grin before walking away. He didn't notice the way her eyes lingered on the ridge outside the base walls, the way she scanned it instinctively, as if looking for patterns or movement that others ignored. At the command center, Major Ryan Cole was briefing his team on upcoming operations. He was all muscle and confidence, the kind of officer who carried command like armor. To him, Emily was background noise, competent, sure, but replaceable. Just another specialist keeping the gears turning. When he passed her tent later that day, he barely gave her a nod. "Good work on the uplink, Sergeant," he said absently, already turning away before she could respond. Emily didn't take offense. She was used to it. She'd always been the quiet one, the one who listened, who observed. Her calm was often mistaken for weakness, her silence for disinterest. What they didn't know was that her calm had been forged long before Afghanistan, in the wide, open lands of Montana, where the wind never stopped blowing and the mountains taught patience. As a child, Emily had learned to shoot from her father, a former Army marksman who believed in focus more than force. Every weekend, they'd drive out beyond the fences of their ranch, set up targets against the rocky ridges, and spend hours perfecting distance shots. "Breathing is everything," he'd tell her, his deep voice steady over the crack of the rifle. "Your heart beats, your chest moves. Those small things can send a bullet off course. You don't fight them. You work with them." Even at 12, Emily could hit a soda can at 600 yards. Her father never praised loudly. Just a small nod, the kind that meant everything. He passed away when she was 17, and the rifle became a memory, one she buried until war gave her a reason to unearth it again. That evening, after her shift ended, the base began to quiet. Soldiers lounged near the barracks, laughing over card games or cleaning weapons. The hum of generators was the soundtrack of survival. Emily walked past them unnoticed, carrying a small metal case to the observation post overlooking the southern desert. Inside the case wasn't communications gear. It was a disassembled M107 Barrett .50 cal rifle, technically restricted to designated marksmen and snipers. She wasn't one of them, not officially, but she knew its pieces better than most. She'd repaired one after a malfunction during a joint op months ago. The feel of the weapon, the balance, the raw precision had stayed with her. Now, under the dying light of the Afghan sun, she assembled it piece by piece. The sound was soft, almost ritualistic. Click, slide, lock. Her fingers moved with practiced rhythm, her eyes flicking occasionally toward the horizon, where the desert stretched endless and gold. A young private passing by froze when he saw her. Ma'am, you're not cleared to handle that," Are you? Emily looked up, calm as ever. Just checking the calibration, she said simply. The private hesitated, then nodded awkwardly and walked away. She could feel his curiosity, or maybe discomfort, but she didn't mind. Let them think she was odd. Better that than draw attention to what she was really doing, testing her instincts again. She lifted the rifle, peered through the scope. Even without a target, her breathing slowed automatically. She measured the distance to a distant outpost, calculated the wind drift, adjusted the scope's elevation. The habits of her past life slipped into place like muscle memory. She wasn't supposed to miss, and she didn't. Through the scope, the mountains stood silent, ancient witnesses to 1,000 forgotten wars. The quiet made her chest ache. In that stillness, she could almost hear her father's voice again. "Don't pull the trigger, Em," it whispered. "Let the shot surprise you. Working late again, Carter?" The voice startled her. She turned to see Sergeant Alvarez, the grizzled veteran sniper who'd been deployed longer than anyone else. His face was lined from years of dust and danger, but his eyes were sharp, always searching. "Just calibrating," she said. He smirked. "That rifle's not standard issue for a comms tech. I know." He studied her a moment longer, then crouched beside her, glancing through the scope. "Your alignment's perfect." "You shoot?" She hesitated, then nodded once. "How far?" 3 kilometers, she said softly. Alvarez chuckled under his breath. "No one hits clean at 3 clicks. Not even most trained snipers." "I didn't say I hit clean," she replied, eyes steady. "Just that I shoot." Something in her tone made Alvarez pause. He'd seen overconfident rookies before, but Emily's confidence was quiet, uncheckable, the kind that came from experience rather than ego. He leaned back on his heels. "You ever want to learn the real thing?" he said finally. "Come find me on the range." She gave the faintest smile. "Maybe I will." Later that night, as the base slept, Emily sat alone outside her tent. The sky above Afghanistan was vast, more stars than she'd ever seen back home. The desert wind carried the scent of dust and diesel, the faint rumble of distant engines. She wrapped her arms around her knees and listened to the low hum of the base, the living pulse of war. Tomorrow would bring another mission, another convoy, another stretch of hostile terrain. The commander would brief his men, the same ones who laughed and joked and forgot her name. She didn't mind. She had her place, her duty, her quiet certainty. Still, as she looked toward the southern ridge, the one where no patrols went, where enemy snipers were rumored to hide, she felt something stir inside her. Not fear, not pride. Something else. A calling, maybe. A challenge the world didn't yet know she could meet. Somewhere out there, a rival watched the same stars through a rifle scope. Somewhere, a battle of eyes and distance had already begun, long before either side pulled a trigger. Emily reached down, brushed dust off the Barrett's case, and whispered to the night, "Let's see who sees first." The desert wind answered her in silence. The dawn over Kandahar arrived like fire on steel, red, sharp, and restless. Dust rose from the base road as the convoy assembled, engines growling low in the morning stillness. Soldiers moved quickly, checking ammo, cleaning weapons, muttering to themselves. There was always a ritual before a mission. One last check, one last joke, one last breath before rolling into uncertainty. Sergeant Emily Carter stood by the lead vehicle, double-checking the communication jammers. She wasn't supposed to be out here. Tech specialists rarely joined combat convoys, but the previous mission's signal interference had been catastrophic. Command needed the best, and Emily was the best. Even Major Ryan Cole couldn't argue with that, though he clearly wanted to. He strode toward her now, his boots crunching on gravel. "Carter, this isn't a lab." "You sure you're up for this?" His tone was clipped, the same mixture of skepticism and habit. He wasn't being cruel. He simply didn't know her. Emily looked up from her toolkit, calm as ever. If the coms go down again, you'll need someone who can fix them fast. I'll stay in the truck. You won't even notice I'm there. Cole sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. That's kind of the problem. I never notice you until something breaks. He gave a half-smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Fine, but you stay behind the line, understood? Understood, sir, she said simply. Her teammates, mostly infantrymen, glanced at her curiously. Some smiled politely. Others looked unconvinced. The idea of a quiet communications specialist joining a combat mission was odd enough. A woman, even more so, though no one said it out loud. She climbed into the Humvee's passenger seat beside Corporal Mason, who grinned nervously as he started the engine. You ever get that feeling? He said, like the desert's watching you? Emily buckled her vest and glanced out the window. The horizon shimmered in the heat, endless and golden. It usually is. They rolled out just after sunrise, 6 vehicles, armed and alert, crawling down a dirt road that cut through barren ridges and ghostly villages. The air tasted of dust and tension. Every mile deeper into the valley, radio static thickened, the signal dropping in and out. Emily frowned, twisting the frequency dial. We're getting interference again, she murmured. Someone's jamming us. It's not random. Cole's voice came through the coms, distorted but firm. Copy that, Carter. Can you stabilize the channel? Trying, she replied, fingers moving quickly. Her toolkit clattered open as she rerouted the power flow through a secondary line. Sparks popped. Static cleared briefly before roaring back worse than before. Then came the first shot. A sharp crack echoed from the cliffs, a sound too distinct to be mistaken. The windshield of the third vehicle exploded in a spiderweb of glass. Contact. Left ridge. Someone shouted. Chaos erupted. Machine guns roared to life, tracers streaking across the valley. The convoy jerked to a stop, dust clouds swallowing visibility. Emily ducked instinctively, covering her head as bullets pinged against the metal frame. The radio screamed with overlapping voices. Panic, orders, screams, then went dead. Signals down. Mason shouted, gripping the wheel. We've lost Cole. Not yet, Emily muttered. She snatched up her toolkit and crawled across the seat, wires whipping against her vest. Her hands worked faster than thought, bypassing the main circuit, isolating the short, rerouting to auxiliary. The radio crackled once, twice, and Cole's voice cut through like salvation. All units suppressing fire. Get those trucks moving. Mason looked at her, eyes wide. How the hell did you? Focus on driving, she said sharply. Go. He slammed the accelerator. The Humvee lurched forward, bouncing hard over rocks as gunfire rattled the hull. Through the open window, Emily saw the ridge, flashes of muzzle fire, the enemy hidden in perfect cover. For a moment, her vision narrowed, instinct pulling her gaze toward one particular outcrop, high, far, but clear enough to see a faint glint of glass. A scope, her heartbeat slowed. That calm again. The same stillness she'd felt on Montana ridges. She grabbed the binoculars from the dashboard, peered through the shaking glass. There, a silhouette. Long rifle, patient movement, deliberate positioning. It wasn't random fire. This was a sniper, calculating, methodical. Major Cole, she called into the comms. You've got a precision shooter on the northern ridge, about 900 meters out, high position. He's not just shooting at vehicles. He's targeting drivers. Cole's voice came back tense. How the hell can you tell from inside a truck? I just can, she said simply. Trust me. A pause then. Copy that. Adjusting position. The convoy shifted, soldiers repositioning, using smoke grenades for cover. Emily's pulse steadied. She wasn't afraid. She was analyzing, predicting angles, seeing the rhythm of the fight. The sniper fired again, this time at the last truck. She flinched, but her brain had already measured the time between shots, the wind pattern, the echo delay. He's trained, she thought. Maybe ex-military. Minutes stretched like hours. The ambush continued until U.S. gunships finally roared overhead, scattering the attackers. The convoy limped forward, smoke trailing behind. Inside the lead Humvee, silence settled thick and heavy. Mason's hands still trembled on the steering wheel. That was close, he breathed. Too damn close. Emily leaned back, closing her eyes briefly. Her hands were shaking, not from fear, but from adrenaline. She exhaled slowly, steadying herself. We lost comms for 4 minutes, she said quietly. If I hadn't rerouted the frequency, you saved us, Mason interrupted, turning to her. That's what you did. She didn't answer. Instead, she looked out the window again at the ridge disappearing behind them. Somewhere up there, the sniper was still watching, still breathing, still waiting for the next chance. The thought didn't frighten her. It fascinated her. Hours later, back at base, Major Cole called her into the command tent. His voice was different this time, quieter, less sure. Carter, he began, about today. You handled yourself better than half my squad. Emily stood at ease, hands clasped behind her back. Just doing my job, sir. He nodded slowly. Maybe, but you spotted that shooter before anyone else. That's not your job. That's instinct. She hesitated and said softly, I've seen shooters like that before. He raised a brow. In comms? In life, she replied, meeting his gaze. For a moment, Cole didn't know what to say. There was something in her eyes, calm, deep, unreadable, that unsettled him. Not fear, not pride, just focus. He finally cleared his throat. Well, keep those instincts sharp. Intel says that snipers still out there, high value, trained, and lethal. We'll be moving on him soon. Yes, sir. As she turned to leave, Cole added quietly, You did good out there, Carter. She paused at the door, looking back. Thank you, sir. But good's not enough. Not if he's still breathing. Then she walked out, leaving Cole staring after her, a little uneasy, a little curious. He couldn't shake the feeling that the quiet tech might just be the most dangerous weapon he had, and that he hadn't even begun to understand her. That night, the desert was still again. Emily sat by her cot, cleaning dust off her rifle components. In the darkness, she replayed the ambush, the timing, the angles, the sniper's method. Each pattern burned into her mind like a puzzle begging to be solved. Outside, wind swept through the base fences, whispering through the tents. Somewhere in the ridges beyond, another pair of eyes looked back toward the camp, patient, calculating. The war between them had already begun. Neither of them knew it yet. Night fell hard over Kandahar, the kind of black silence that made every soldier feel smaller. The day's heat still lingered in the metal of the tents, but the air was cool enough that breath fogged faintly. Inside the base, the noise of the mess hall had faded, replaced by the low hum of generators and the distant bark of dogs beyond the wire. Sergeant Emily Carter sat alone in the dim glow of a laptop screen, reviewing the drone footage from the convoy ambush. The video was grainy, but her eyes stayed locked on it with unwavering focus. Frame by frame, she tracked movement along the ridges. A flash here, a glint there, the sniper's position. Every detail mattered. Pause, she whispered to herself, freezing the image. A small shape, barely visible, moved just before the first shot in the ambush. She zoomed in, enhancing as much as the footage would allow. The shape blended perfectly with the rocks, like a ghost crouched in plain sight. He had known exactly where to hide, exactly when to strike. She scribbled notes in her logbook: distance, elevation, direction of the sun, even the wind direction from the dust trail. Patterns were forming, and Emily saw them as clearly as the circuitry in her comms gear. Still watching the same video? A voice broke the silence. She turned to find Sergeant Alvarez leaning in the tent doorway, arms folded, a cup of black coffee in hand. His grizzled face looked almost silver in the lamplight. "You've been at that for 3 hours," he said. "Command already filed the report. Let it go." "I can't," Emily replied quietly. "He's methodical. He fired 3 times, each 8 seconds apart. That's not random. He's repositioning between shots." Alvarez raised an eyebrow. "You think he's military trained?" "I know he is," she said, tapping her pen against the notepad. "Whoever he is, he's studied us. He knows convoy routines, timing, even our radio dead zones." Alvarez walked in, setting his cup on the table. "You've got a sharp eye, Carter. Most people just see chaos in that footage. You see patterns." He paused, studying her. "You ever think about doing something other than fixing radios?" Emily gave a small, dry smile. "Once or twice." The next evening, she found herself on the shooting range. The sky was streaked orange and violet as the sun sank behind the hills. Alvarez stood waiting, his Barrett .5 Ocal rifle propped on a sandbag. "Thought you might show up," he said, handing her a set of earplugs. "I'm not exactly cleared for this," she replied, glancing around. "Neither am I," Alvarez grinned. "But I figure anyone who can see like you should learn to shoot like you." Just between us, Emily crouched beside the rifle. It looked massive even resting still, the matte barrel catching the last light. Alvarez showed her how to shoulder it properly, how to read the wind with the small flags planted downrange, how to control her breathing until time itself seemed to hold still. "Don't fight the recoil," he said. "Let it happen. Let the rifle breathe with you." She pressed her cheek against the stock, the cold metal grounding her. Through the scope, the world shrank to one circle, one rusted oil drum 1,500 meters away. She adjusted, inhaled, and squeezed the trigger. Boom! The echo rolled across the range. Dust lifted around the drum, but no hole appeared. "Little high," Alvarez said. "You pulled on the breath." She reloaded. Second shot, boom. Closer, better. Third shot, boom. Dead center. The drum jolted backward, a puff of rust and dirt bursting from its surface. Alvarez blinked, then let out a low whistle. "You sure you're not lying about your MOS?" Emily lifted her head, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "Just learn to listen to the wind." Days turned into weeks. Between her official duties, she trained quietly with Alvarez whenever the schedule allowed. Every night, they set up new targets. Further, smaller, more difficult. He taught her the mathematics of shooting. Bullet drop, barometric pressure, Coriolis drift. But where he calculated, Emily seemed to feel the solution, adjusting almost instinctively. Her precision was uncanny. At 2,000 meters, her grouping was tighter than most trained snipers managed at half that distance. Alvarez began calling her Ghost, half-jokingly, though even he wasn't sure if it was about her stealth or her impossible calm. During breaks, they talked. Alvarez told stories of his early deployments, of the friends he'd lost, the missions that haunted him. Emily rarely spoke of herself, but one night, when the desert wind howled hard enough to shake their tent, she finally opened up. "My brother, Luke," she said quietly, staring at the rifle on her lap. "He was a Marine sniper." Iraq, 2008. His team was ambushed outside Fallujah. He didn't make it. Alvarez lowered his coffee. I'm sorry, Carter. He used to tell me stories when we were kids, she continued. About focus. About distance. I never understood why he loved the precision so much. After he died, I didn't touch a rifle again. Not until here. There was silence for a long time. The wind outside sounded like a memory moving through the sand. Alvarez finally nodded. Then I guess this isn't just a skill for you. No, she said softly. It's something unfinished. The next morning, she was called to the operations tent for a debrief. Cole and the intelligence officer, Captain Green, stood over a satellite map covered in markers. We've tracked increased radio chatter, Green said. Same frequency bands the insurgent sniper used during the ambush. He's relocating between these ridges. He pointed at the map. He's smart. Changes elevation every 24 hours. Avoids drone detection. Emily studied the map quietly, then pointed to a narrow valley near the outer perimeter. Here, she said. Cole frowned. That sector's been cleared twice. He's not hiding in the valley, she replied. He's using it as a kill zone. There's an old fuel drum line here, rusted metal. He's shooting from beyond it, letting the heat distort his muzzle flash. That's why recon missed him. Green looked at Cole. She might be right. Cole crossed his arms. And how exactly would you know that, Sergeant? Emily met his gaze without flinching. Because that's what I would do. For a moment, silence filled the tent. Cole studied her, the quiet technician who spoke like she'd been hunting all her life. Then he turned to Green. Verify it. If she's right, we'll reassign a recon drone. As Emily left, she caught Cole muttering under his breath, almost to himself. She's not like anyone else in this unit. That evening, she returned to the range one last time. Alvarez had set up a target beyond the usual line, 3,000 meters, almost absurdly far. The desert shimmered under a rising moon. You don't have to prove anything, he told her. I'm not, she said. I just need to know. She lay prone, adjusting the scope. The air was perfectly still. Her finger rested lightly on the trigger, the world narrowing to breath and heartbeat. Boom. The shot echoed for what felt like eternity. Through the scope, the drum quivered, and a tiny black hole appeared dead center. Alvarez let out a slow breath. 3 kilometers, he said softly. You just did the impossible. Emily stayed still, eyes on the target, expression unreadable. Not impossible, she murmured. Just unseen. Alvarez looked at her, the way she lay motionless against the rifle, how the moonlight caught her profile. For the first time in his long career, he felt a flicker of unease, not from fear, but from recognition. There was something in her, something rare, something dangerous, a kind of calm that only appeared in people born for precision. Ghost, he said finally. You ever wonder what happens when someone like you finds her purpose? Emily rose, slinging the Barrett over her shoulder. Then the world stops under her scope. She walked away into the shadows, the desert wind tugging gently at her hair. Somewhere far off, across the same sands, another sniper was also cleaning his rifle, unaware that the hunt had already begun, and that the quiet tech from the U.S. base was now watching him through the dark, patient as the desert itself. Dawn crept across the Kandahar desert like a slow-burning fuse. The horizon glowed red, the air trembling with heat before the sun had even fully risen. The camp stirred, vehicles rumbled awake, boots scraped gravel, and the faint thump of helicopter blades pulsed in the distance. Inside the operations tent, Major Cole leaned over a satellite feed, tension etched into his jawline. Around him, officers spoke in clipped tones, trading coordinates and radio codes. At the back of the room, Sergeant Emily Carter stood silent, her arms crossed, eyes fixed on the terrain displayed across the monitors. Green pointed to a section of jagged ridges marked in red. We've confirmed the sniper's nest. Drone footage shows fresh heat signatures, 2 bodies, 1 heavy caliber weapon, likely a Russian KSVK. They're moving east, possibly to intercept our next patrol route. Cole nodded grimly. We'll send in Ghost Team to neutralize. 6-man unit. No airstrike. We can't risk civilian structures nearby. He paused, his gaze flicking to Emily. Carter, you'll ride with them? We'll need eyes on their comms if they go dark. A murmur spread across the tent. Soldiers exchanged looks. Attack on a combat op? Cole's words carried finality, but surprise rippled through the ranks nonetheless. Emily didn't react. She simply nodded, as if she'd been waiting for this moment all along. Alvarez caught her arm as she turned to leave. You sure about this? He murmured. That ridge isn't a classroom. Emily glanced at him. Neither is life, Sergeant. By 0600, the convoy rolled out. 2 Humvees and a lightweight ATV, mounted with a Barrett M107, rode across the desert, engines growling low. The sun was now a white blade cutting across the sand. Emily sat in the rear seat, her headset linked to both the comms and the drone feed. In her lap, wrapped carefully in canvas, lay the Barrett. She had never taken it outside the range before. Her fingers rested lightly on the case, not out of fear, but anticipation. Across from her, Staff Sergeant Mills, team lead of Ghost Team, eyed her skeptically. You ever been shot at, Carter? She shook her head. Not yet. Mills smirked. Let's hope today's not your first. She looked at him calmly. Let's hope it is. The men chuckled, but there was something in her tone, steady, almost clinical, that silenced them just as quickly. 3 hours later, they reached the drop zone, a narrow basin flanked by sandstone cliffs. The team dismounted, weapons ready. Emily moved with them, scanning the horizon through her scope. Thermals are picking up faint movement, she reported softly. Elevation North Ridge, 1,200 meters up. Wind 4 knots eastward. Mills signaled 2 men forward. Alpha and Bravo, recon to the ridge base. Keep low. The team advanced. For 20 minutes, silence ruled. Then the desert cracked open with a single thunderous shot. Crack! The man at point dropped instantly. His partner dove for cover. Dust exploded around them. Sniper, North Ridge. Mills shouted, dragging his fallen man behind a boulder. We've got a shooter. Emily hit the dirt, scanning through her scope. The glare made it almost impossible to spot, but she saw it, a faint shimmer near a boulder, like a mirage bending the light. There, she whispered. Top of the ridge, shadow between the rocks. Distance, 2,400 meters. Too far for us, Mills growled. We don't have the range. Emily opened the Barrett's case, pulling out the weapon with careful precision. The men stared as she locked the bolt and adjusted the bipod. What the hell are you doing? Mills demanded. Ending this, she replied. You're a comtech, not? The rest was lost in the recoil's roar. Boom. The Barrett thundered, its muzzle brake throwing dust in all directions. Through her scope, Emily saw the shimmer shift. The enemy sniper rolled sideways, caught completely off guard, his cover shattered by the first shot. He's moving, she called. Adjusting position, same ridge, 20 meters right. Mills stared at her, stunned. You hit him? Not yet, she said, reloading. She exhaled, slowed her heartbeat, and squeezed again. BOOM. The bullet screamed across the valley, echoing like a storm. The enemy rifle's muzzle flash disappeared mid-shot. Then nothing. Silence. Even the wind seemed to pause. "Target down," Emily said flatly. No one spoke. Mills lowered his binoculars, still staring at the ridge. Holy, that was over 2 clicks out. They climbed to the ridge hours later, confirming what she already knew. The enemy sniper, a bearded man in desert fatigues, lay half buried in dust, his rifle still aimed at the valley. A clean wound above the collarbone. 1 shot, 1 kill. Mills knelt beside the body, shaking his head. "You just saved half my unit, Carter." Emily looked down, her face unreadable. "No," she said quietly. "He's not alone. Look at his position. There's a spotter somewhere close." The team began to sweep the area, moving methodically. 10 minutes later, they found the second man, hidden beneath camouflage netting, throat slit clean. Not by bullet, by knife. "This wasn't him," Emily murmured, crouching beside the body. "He didn't kill his partner. Someone else did." Mills frowned. "Meaning?" "Meaning someone cleaned up before we got here," she replied. "Someone who knew we were coming." That night, back at base, the atmosphere was electric. Word had spread. The tech girl had taken down a sniper from over 2 kilometers. Cole's tent was crowded with officers, analysts, even a few curious Marines. Emily stood at the center, unflinching, while Cole debriefed. "So, Sergeant Carter," he said, pacing slowly, "you spotted, calculated, and neutralized a target at 2,400 meters using a Barrett rifle, something most trained snipers can't do in optimal conditions." "Yes, sir," she replied evenly. "And yet, you're not sniper qualified. You've never deployed in a combat role." "No, sir." He stopped in front of her. "How do you explain that?" Emily met his eyes. Observation, practice, and the will to stop someone who thought no one was watching. A few officers exchanged glances. Cole folded his arms. "You realize this changes things. How so?" He studied her for a moment. "We've been hunting this sniper for months. You found him in a day. But now you're telling me someone else killed his partner and left the scene before we arrived. That means there's another player in this, possibly inside our network." Emily nodded once. "Yes, sir. Someone's feeding intel to both sides." Cole's jaw tightened. "You're saying we have a leak?" "I'm saying the man I shot wasn't the last one aiming at us." Later, Emily sat outside under the vast Afghan night, a Barrett resting beside her. Alvarez joined her quietly, handing her a tin mug of coffee. "You did good today," he said. "But I can tell you're not celebrating." She shook her head. "It felt too easy. He exposed himself. That doesn't happen unless he wanted to be found." Alvarez frowned. "Bait? Maybe," she said. "Or a distraction." They sat in silence for a while, the wind whispering through the sand. Finally, Alvarez spoke again. "You know, Carter, Cole's right about one thing. You're not like the others. You see the whole battlefield like it's a circuit board, one faulty wire and everything goes dark." She looked out toward the ridges, where the horizon was just a black line cutting through the stars. "Then I guess it's time to find who's pulling the plug." That night, as she returned to her tent, a folded note lay on her cot. No name. Just a short line in block handwriting. "You're getting close, Ghost, but you're not the only one with a scope." She froze, eyes scanning the shadows. The tent flaps stirred in the wind, and somewhere far beyond the wire, a single gunshot echoed faintly, not aimed at anyone. A message, perhaps. A challenge. And Emily Carter, the quiet tech who wasn't supposed to be on the battlefield, realized the hunt had only just begun. The sun had barely risen over Kandahar, and the desert already glared with a blinding heat. Sergeant Emily Carter crouched behind a sand dune, Barrett .50 rifle assembled, her eyes scanning the valley below. She was no longer just a tech. The events at Sentinel Ridge had changed that. She had tasted the discipline, the focus, the adrenaline of real combat, and she would never turn back. Sergeant Alvarez crouched nearby, keeping watch on the flanks. His voice was low but tense. "You ready for this?" Emily didn't answer. Her focus was absolute. On the ridge across the valley, a lone figure moved among rocks, scanning the desert floor with a scope identical in size to hers. The enemy's sniper, the one they called Mirage, had returned. "They've learned," she whispered. "He's not just skilled. He's anticipating our every move." Alvarez's face darkened. "Then we better be faster." Inside the operations tent back at base, Major Cole and Captain Green studied a satellite feed. Every intel source pointed to the same conclusion. Mirage was systematically sabotaging coalition patrols. Every ambush, every radio interference, every attack on convoys could be traced back to him. "Distance, precision, and anticipation," Emily explained, pointing at the live feed on her tablet. "He's moving like he knows our patterns. Someone is feeding him our locations." Cole frowned. "You mean a leak?" "Yes, sir. And not just any leak, someone with direct access to our comms and tactical data." Green's jaw tightened. That would require top-level clearance. Someone inside the base. Emily's gaze didn't leave the screen. "And the timing matches exactly with every ambush. He's hunting us using our own information. Whoever's behind this knows how we operate, down to the second." Cole exhaled, rubbing his face. "Then we're not just fighting a sniper. We're fighting ghosts in our own ranks." Back on the ridge, Emily shifted slightly, checking her rangefinder. 2,950 meters. Wind 5 knots east. Air temperature rising. Heat shimmer distorting the line of sight. She adjusted the scope, breathing in carefully. "Target on the move," Alvarez said, whispering. "What's the plan?" Emily's eyes didn't leave the reticle. "We draw him out. He's hunting the wrong convoy. He wants us to think we're blind. That's how we'll catch him." Alvarez nodded. "And if he shoots first?" She tilted her head, calculating. "Then I shoot faster. And more accurately." Moments later, the first shot cracked across the valley. A warning round. Emily barely flinched. She traced the flash through her scope, following the movement, reading the wind, and waited. Boom! Her Barrett roared. The bullet screamed across the desert, hitting the ridge just ahead of the target's shadow. The enemy sniper's position exploded with dust, forcing him to roll behind cover. Alvarez whistled softly. "You got him." Emily didn't move. Not yet. The sniper was clever, moving rapidly along the rocks, using the sun and shadows to hide his position. Every time Emily adjusted, he anticipated, forcing her to recalculate. Hours passed like this, a deadly chess match across kilometers of desert. Then, as night fell, a subtle disturbance caught Emily's attention. A faint glint of metal, just behind a cluster of rocks. A spotter, not an insurgent, but someone wearing gear consistent with coalition forces. Alvarez leaned in. One of ours? Emily's jaw tightened. Or someone pretending to be. She crawled closer, keeping low. Using a small mirror to reflect moonlight, she confirmed her suspicion. The figure carried communications equipment identical to what she herself had used at base. "This is the leak," she whispered. "He's feeding him everything. Wind readings, movement patterns, even patrol routes. That's how he knew Sentinel Ridge was clear when we approached." Alvarez's eyes widened. Then the Mirage isn't just smart. He's being guided. Emily set up her Barrett again, calculating distance, wind, mirage distortion, and the faint vibration of the valley below. 3,247 meters. Her finger hovered over the trigger. We neutralize him, and the leak will be exposed. Before she could act, a flash of motion, a figure sliding across the ridge, and a single, clean shot rang out from the enemy's side. Dust kicked up behind her position, and Alvarez threw himself flat. "He knows we're here," Alvarez shouted. Emily remained calm, her mind racing. "He's testing me. That wasn't a kill shot. He's drawing me in." For nearly 2 hours, the sniper duel continued, alternating fire, shadowing movements, trading suppressive shots, each bullet a conversation of skill, will, and intent. Emily realized something. Her adversary wasn't just skilled. He knew her. At a brief lull, she studied the shadowy ridge, scanning for movement patterns. That's when she noticed something in the heat shimmer, subtle but unmistakable. The stance, the rhythm, the precision. She knew this style. Alvarez noticed the tension in her posture. "You're recognizing him?" Emily didn't answer. She replayed the mental image, calculating the sequence of movements she had memorized. It wasn't possible. And yet, every motion mirrored the training she had learned years ago. Her brother's voice echoed in her mind. "Every bullet tells the truth. You just have to listen." The realization hit her like a thunderclap. Alvarez, it's him. The mirage. It's Luke. Alvarez froze. "Your brother?" Emily didn't speak. Her fingers rested lightly on the trigger, her eyes tracing every movement. "I thought he was dead, but he's alive. And they've turned him into this weapon." Alvarez shook his head, disbelief etched on his face. "Then what do we do?" Emily exhaled slowly, voice cold and steady. "We find out who pulled the strings, and we stop them without losing him." For the first time, the desert felt heavier, as though the sand itself weighed down on them with the gravity of betrayal, family, and the long shadows of war. The night deepened. The mirage was still out there, unseen but watching, calculating, patient. Emily set herself in position. Barrett braced, heart steady despite the storm inside. She whispered to herself, "One shot, one chance. And this ends tonight, or I lose him forever." The desert wind howled across the Kandahar ridgeline, kicking up thin veils of dust that shimmered like ghosts in the early dawn. The outpost had gone quiet after the explosion the night before. The blast had torn through one of the fuel depots near the south perimeter, leaving 2 soldiers injured and 1 dead. Major Cole hadn't slept. His eyes were red-rimmed, jaw clenched as he stood inside the tactical tent, staring at the live drone feed flickering on the monitors. "Sabotage," he muttered. No question. Someone on the inside gave them access. Across the table, Sergeant Emily Carter stood with her headset dangling around her neck, face calm but eyes sharp. She'd been reviewing communication logs since midnight, cross-referencing timestamps and transmission bursts. "There's a 3-second frequency spike right before the explosion," she said, pointing to the data scrolling across the screen. "Encrypted, non-coalition source. Whoever sent it used our own relay antenna." Cole frowned. "Meaning?" "Meaning the leak isn't just someone feeding intel. They're inside our signal network. Someone with clearance." He exhaled slowly. "And you think it's connected to the sniper?" Emily nodded. "He knew we were coming. Every move we made, every route. He wasn't guessing, he was listening." Later that morning, she found Alvarez near the shooting range, adjusting his scope under the blazing Afghan sun. "You hear about the depot?" he asked. "I was there," she said. Alvarez looked up, concern etched in his weathered face. "You okay?" "Physically, yes." Her tone was distant. "But the data doesn't add up. Someone triggered the blast from a laptop inside the base. I traced the ping. It came from the communications hub." He frowned. That's your section. I know, she said quietly, which means it's either someone using my clearance or someone watching me. That evening, Cole called a closed meeting. Only 3 people attended: Cole, Emily, and Captain Green. Intel from HQ confirms chatter about a new sniper in the region, Green said. Cody name, the Mirage. He's ex-Russian Spetsnaz, reportedly trained under the same unit that used the KSVK rifle you neutralized last month. Emily listened, unmoving. Green continued. He's not working alone. The chatter says he's been hired by a private intermediary, someone feeding him coalition troop schedules. His specialty? Counter-sniping. He doesn't just shoot soldiers. He hunts marksmen. Cole turned toward Emily. They call you Ghost now. Seems like he's noticed. Emily's lips tightened. Then maybe it's time I meet the Mirage. The next 72 hours were a blur of planning and silence. Cole ordered minimal comms usage. No digital pings. No satellite uploads. Emily and Alvarez went dark, operating only on line-of-sight signals to avoid detection. They relocated to a forward operating post, FOB Sentinel, built into the ruins of an old stone village. The terrain was hostile. Ridges, sharp wind currents, valleys that played tricks on sound. Perfect ground for a sniper duel. Night came heavy. The desert was cold and soundless, except for the faint hum of distant drones. Emily lay prone behind a pile of shattered bricks, the Barrett set up before her. Alvarez crawled beside her, adjusting his binoculars. Rangefinder reads 2,700 meters to the northern ridge, he whispered. That's where I'd set up if I wanted a clear line on this post. Emily exhaled, aligning her scope. He's already there. Alvarez stiffened. How do you know? Because he's watching us. Through the scope, she spotted it. A brief flicker, a reflection barely visible before it vanished. Not sunlight. Optic glare. A sniper's worst mistake. She smiled faintly. Got you? For an hour, they played the silent chess game that only snipers know. She would shift position, wait. He would counter-move, slightly altering angle. He was good. Too good. Every repositioning anticipated hers by seconds, as if he knew her rhythm, her breathing pattern. Then came the shot. Crack. A bullet split the air inches from her face, ricocheting off the stone wall behind her. Alvarez dropped instantly. He's got your range, he shouted. Emily ducked, heart steady despite the closeness of death. He's testing me. That wasn't meant to kill. Testing you? For what? To see if I panic. Another shot rang. Crack. This time closer, grazing the metal lip of her rifle. Emily inhaled slowly, shifted her scope 3 degrees left, and waited. Wind direction, 5 knots. Distance, 3,200 meters. Air density, low. Mirage distortion heavy. She remembered her brother's old words. If you can't see him clearly, see the heat. There a ripple in the air. Not a shadow, but a distortion, as if the desert itself bent slightly. She fired. Boom. A half-second later, crack. His shot answered hers. Both bullets crossed mid-air, like 2 ghosts colliding. The desert echoed with twin thunder. Neither hit. Silence returned, broken only by the dry hiss of the wind. Alvarez exhaled shakily. He's better than I thought. Emily adjusted her scope again, whispering, he's not better. Just patient. Hours passed. The night grew colder. Alvarez dozed off in short bursts, but Emily never moved. The moon slid west, painting the ridges in silver. At 0200, movement flickered in her scope, not the sniper, but a shape crawling toward his position. A small figure, wrapped in desert cloth, carrying a radio pack. Spotter, she muttered. She aimed, but hesitated. Something about the way the spotter moved, too precise, too deliberate, didn't fit. She focused, zooming in on the hands. Gloves, military issue. Not insurgent. Coalition gear. Alvarez, she whispered. The spotter's one of ours. He jolted awake. What? Before he could speak again, the ridge erupted in light. A flash, then a thunderous explosion. The blast tore through the rocks, sending a fiery wave down the slope. Emily threw herself behind cover, the shock wave slamming her chest. When the smoke cleared, the ridge was gone, reduced to rubble. Remote detonation, she gasped, coughing. He blew his own position. Alvarez stared in disbelief. Why the hell would he do that? Emily looked out toward the burning ridge. Because he wanted us to think he's dead. Back at base the next morning, chaos reigned. The blast had triggered seismic sensors across the region, drawing command attention. Cole stormed into the tent, livid. You were supposed to observe, not engage. He shouted. Now we've got a crater instead of intel. Emily removed her headset, meeting his glare. Sir, the Mirage isn't dead. He staged the explosion. And his spotter was one of ours. Coalition gear, U.S. gloves, model M-Tech radio with our encryption. Cole froze. You're saying he's working with someone inside our command? Yes, sir, she said quietly. And whoever it is, they're feeding him my location. That night, she sat alone again, replaying the encounter in her mind. The precision of his shots. The calculated timing. The way he mirrored her breathing, her rhythm. A thought began to form, one that made her stomach tighten. She pulled up her old drone logs and side by side compared timestamps. The patterns matched. The Mirage wasn't just predicting her, he was echoing her. Each movement, each shift, each hold, identical. He studied me, she whispered. Every motion, every decision. But there was something else. In one of the old training logs from months ago, she saw a second profile linked to her simulation data. A mirrored account used for sniper training analysis. The name on the file made her heart stop. Luke Carter, her brother. She sat frozen, the screen's glow flickering across her face. Luke had been listed KIA in 2008, but the file showed active data access 6 months ago from a restricted satellite relay in Eastern Europe. She whispered to the empty tent, "No, it can't be." But deep down, she already knew the truth. The Mirage wasn't just hunting her. He was her brother, and he had been alive this whole time. The tent was silent, except for the faint hum of the laptop fan. The desert wind scratched at the canvas, whispering through the night like a warning. Sergeant Emily Carter sat motionless, eyes locked on the glowing name on her screen. Luke Carter active link, Eastern Relay Node, classified clearance. Her pulse thudded in her ears. It couldn't be real. Her brother had died 17 years ago. Confirmed, reported, buried. She had been handed a folded flag, his dog tags, and a form letter from the Department of Defense. Yet here it was, his ID, his clearance, his operational logs still active. She scrolled down, trembling. The access logs traced back through proxy relays across Kazakhstan, Ukraine, then southern Afghanistan, all within the last 6 months. Each entry tagged under a single codename, Mirage. Her stomach turned cold. He wasn't just alive. He was the one hunting her. Outside, the night stretched wide and empty. The desert air was bitter now, the wind carrying the faint metallic scent of sand and gun oil. Emily stepped out of her tent, still numb. Her mind a storm of memories. Luke teaching her to steady her breath at the range back in Wyoming. His laughter when she missed, his calm voice saying, "Every bullet tells the truth. You just have to listen." And now, the truth was screaming. A voice came from behind her. "You're not sleeping either, huh?" It was Sergeant Alvarez, holding 2 tin mugs of coffee. His silhouette looked older in the moonlight, worn and heavy with the same fatigue that haunted all of them. Emily didn't answer. She took a mug, her hand shaking slightly. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Alvarez said quietly. She gave a hollow laugh. "Maybe I have." He studied her face, the shadows under her eyes. "Talk to me." She hesitated, then turned the laptop toward him, the screen still glowing. When he read the name, his expression hardened. "Your brother?" She nodded. "I thought he—" "So did I," she cut in. "But it's him. It has to be. The way he moves, the way he calculates. He's using my old targeting data. The same rhythm, the same breathing cycle. It's identical." Alvarez stared at her for a long moment, then exhaled. "If it's really him, why? Why attack his own people?" Emily looked out at the ridges. "That's what I'm going to find out." By morning, Major Cole was pacing inside the operations tent, jaw tight with frustration. Reports of the explosion at Sentinel Ridge had reached higher command, and now questions were flying from every direction. Cole turned sharply as Emily walked in. "Carter, I told you to rest. You're not on rotation until—" She cut him off. "Sir, I know who the Mirage is." The room went still. Even the radio chatter seemed to fade. Cole blinked. "You what?" She swallowed hard. "It's my brother, sir. Luke Carter, U.S. Marine Corps. Presumed KIA, Fallujah, 2008. The silence was suffocating. Cole stared at her like he wasn't sure he'd heard right. "That's impossible," he said finally. "Your brother's dead." "I thought so too," Emily said, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. "But the digital logs don't lie. His ID's been active, rerouted through a covert channel we didn't know existed." Green, sitting nearby, frowned. "That's classified tech. No civilian or insurgent could spoof that. It's Black Ops encryption." Cole rubbed his temple. "So what are you saying? That he was working for us all this time?" Emily shook her head slowly. "Not for us. For someone who owns the data. Someone who wanted a sniper capable of hitting 3,000 meters without a flag on his shoulder." Cole's eyes narrowed. "You think a private contractor recruited him?" "I think," she said, "they rebuilt him." By noon, Cole authorized an off-the-books mission. 1 unit, 2 operators. Emily and Alvarez. No satellite tracking. No radio chatter. Just old-school fieldwork. Their orders were simple. Track the Mirage. Confirm identity. If hostile, terminate. But for Emily, the last line wasn't an option. They rode out under the blistering sun, a battered jeep rattling through dunes and dry gullies. The heat was merciless. Even the horizon shimmered like it couldn't bear to stay still. "Any signal?" Alvarez asked, wiping sweat from his forehead. Emily studied her handheld scanner. Faint ping. 3 kilometers northwest. Signal bounce from a drone repeater. Low power, probably a decoy. Then where's the real source? She smiled faintly. "You ever hunt your own shadow, Alvarez?" He gave her a puzzled look. "Neither have I," she said, loading a fresh round into the Barrett. They reached the ridge by dusk. The world had turned gold and red, the air cooling as night crawled closer. Emily set up her rifle facing west, scanning the opposite cliffs through the scope. At first, nothing. Just rocks, heat shimmer, and silence. Then she saw it, a single small glint of glass. "He's here," she whispered. She didn't need to say who. They waited. Minutes felt like hours. The last light died, and the desert turned blue beneath the rising moon. Then a sound. Soft, mechanical. A drone camera, hovering low. Alvarez hissed, "We're compromised." Emily didn't move. "No, he wants me to see him." The drone's light blinked once, then a voice crackled through her earpiece. "Hello, Em." Her blood froze. The voice was deeper, rougher than she remembered, but unmistakable. "Luke," she whispered. "Been a long time, little sister. Where are you?" She demanded, scanning the ridge. "Close enough. You're getting better minus 3,200 meters last shot, wasn't it? I'm proud of you." Her throat tightened. "Why, Luke? Why are you doing this?" The silence stretched before his answer came, low and bitter. "Because the people you serve left me to die." Her hands trembled. "That's not true, isn't it?" He said. "Fallujah, 2008. We were captured, experimented on, rewritten. They called it Project Viper. Only a few of us survived. We weren't supposed to exist afterward. But I do. And now they've sent you to erase the last proof." Emily's heart pounded. "No, I didn't know. You weren't supposed to." The drone hovered closer, its lens tilting down at her like an eye. "This isn't your war anymore. Go home." She clenched her jaw. "You know I can't. Then I'll have to make you." The feed cut. The drone dropped suddenly, crashing into the sand. A heartbeat later, a shot. Crack. The bullet struck inches from her, spraying dust across her face. She rolled aside, adrenaline flooding her veins. "He's firing warnings," Alvarez shouted. "He doesn't want to kill you." "Not yet," she said, loading the Barrett. "But I need to end this before someone else does." The firefight raged through the night, a duel of shadows across kilometers of desert. Each shot was a conversation, each silence a decision. He'd fire near her. She'd respond, both missing deliberately, both trying to read the other's intent. Finally, near dawn, her scope caught a figure moving along the western ridge. Tall, lean, face masked. The way he moved, the way he set his stance. "Luke," she whispered. She didn't shoot. He did. The bullet tore through the sand beside her, embedding itself in the barrel of her rifle. A perfect warning shot. Then his voice came again, faint through her combs, soft and tired. "You still breathe between the shots, Em. That's how I knew it was you." Then silence. The transmission ended. She lowered her rifle, tears burning behind her eyes. Alvarez approached slowly. "He could have killed you." "I know. So what now?" Emily stared at the empty ridge where her brother had vanished into the sunrise. "Now," she said, her voice steady, "I stop him from becoming what they made him." But as they turned back toward the jeep, Emily's radio blinked to life. A priority signal from Major Cole's encrypted channel. "Carter, Alvarez, get back to base. Now, we've been compromised. Command's pulling us out." "And Carter?" The line crackled, his tone grim. "The orders changed. Mirage is no longer a capture target." Emily froze. "What do you mean?" Cole hesitated. "You're ordered to terminate him." The signal cut. She stood motionless, the words echoing in her head. Terminate. Her brother. Her mentor. Her enemy. Her blood. The desert wind rose around her, whispering through the dunes like the ghosts of every soldier lost to silence. And in that wind, she heard Luke's voice again, faint, distant, and filled with the weight of memory. "Every bullet tells the truth, Em. You just have to listen." She tightened her grip on the Barrett. For the first time, she wasn't sure if she wanted to hear it. The desert stretched endlessly, crimson under the rising sun. The air smelled of sand, dust, and faint smoke from last night's firefight. Sergeant Emily Carter crouched behind a jagged boulder, Barrett .50, resting against the rock, her eyes tracing every shadow across the ridge. She could feel the weight of the order pressing down on her like the desert sun itself. Terminate her brother. Luke Carter, codenamed Mirage, the man she had once idolized, the brother she had mourned, now her target. Every instinct screamed at her. Her duty, her training, her loyalty. But another voice, the one that remembered a boy with laughter in his eyes, reminded her he was still family. She took a slow breath, steadying her hands. 3,247 meters to the ridge where she had last seen him. Beyond that, every shot could end a life she still loved. She adjusted the scope and zoomed in. There he was, crouched, scanning the valley with a rifle identical to hers. He didn't move. He was waiting, patient, his shadow stretched across the rock. Emily whispered under her breath, "I can't let them make him a weapon." "Not like this." Alvarez moved beside her, voice low. "Orders are orders, Carter. You hesitate, you get pulled from the field. You shoot, you kill your brother." Her jaw tightened. "He's not a weapon. Not yet. He's my brother. And I won't." A sudden crack. A tracer bullet zipping past, carving dust from the boulder. The Mirage had seen her. Her heart pounded. She fired. Boom! The round screamed across the ridge. Luke rolled to cover behind a boulder, not a scratch. His eyes met hers through the scope. No fear, only recognition. "Emily," he said, voice crackling over the coms. "I didn't expect you here." "Why?" She gritted her teeth. "Because I couldn't let them destroy you." "Destroy me?" "Yes," she whispered. "Project Viper. They made you a weapon. And now they want you dead, or worse, to turn on me." Silence. Then, faintly, a chuckle. "Funny, they thought I'd turn. But they didn't count on my little sister being faster, sharper, smarter." Emily swallowed. "You're alive." "All this time? Why?" "Because I had to," he said. "They thought I was gone. But they underestimated the brother who taught his little sister to see through the chaos." Hours passed as they circled each other across the ridges, exchanging fire, testing wind, calculating distance. Every round was deliberate. Warnings, measures, a conversation in gunfire. Emily had never felt such precision, such intimacy with danger. Every move Luke made mirrored her own training. He anticipated her reflexes, just as she remembered from the range. Then the wind shifted, bringing dust and sand into her face. She fired instinctively. Boom! And for a fraction of a second, the round passed closer than she expected. Luke fell back, hands raised. "Enough," he called. "We're done playing games." She lowered the Barrett, trembling. "We're done if you come back. You don't have to be their weapon anymore. Come back to me, Luke." A long silence. Then his voice, roughened by years of war. "I can't go back. Not yet. Not while they think they can use me." Emily felt a tear slide down her cheek. "Then we fight them together." Cole's encrypted channel buzzed suddenly. "Orders from command. Terminate Mirage immediately. Mission priority. Neutralize rogue operative. All units are armed." Emily clenched her jaw. She didn't reply. "They've sent them, Emily. You hear that?" Luke said. "Yes," she whispered. "And we'll face them together." They moved as one across the ridge, shadows blending with the rocks. Every sniper in the valley took aim, but neither moved without the other noticing. They communicated silently, gestures, eyes, the subtle shifting of rifle weight. "They never expected the twins of chaos," Luke whispered, half joking. Emily smiled faintly. "Then let's give them a show." The firefight erupted. Enemy soldiers scrambled across the ridges, firing blindly into the dust and shadow. Emily and Luke moved in tandem, shots precise, each round suppressing threats without taking unnecessary life. The Barretts thundered in synchrony, echoing across the valley like twin storms. At one point, a soldier emerged from cover, aiming directly at Emily. Luke fired first, a warning round, dust exploding at the enemy's feet. Emily moved, taking a calculated shot that disabled his weapon without lethal force. "We can do this," she said, voice steady despite pounding adrenaline. "We will," he replied. Hours blurred. Exhaustion crept in, but their rhythm never faltered. Every threat they neutralized brought them closer, to each other, to surviving the desert, to reclaiming the bond that years of secrecy and war had tried to destroy. Finally, at the edge of the ridge, they faced the last obstacle, a drone relay station, bristling with sensors, encryption devices, and guards. This was the heart of Project Viper, the nerve center controlling rogue ops in the region. Emily took a deep breath. "We end this now." Luke nodded, and together they moved forward. Using the terrain, the shadows, and every sniper skill they had honed for years, they dismantled the perimeter silently, taking down each guard with non-lethal precision where possible. The Barretts thundered only when absolutely necessary, each shot calculated. Inside the control tent, Emily hacked into the main terminal, overriding encryption codes, while Luke disabled remote firing systems. The relay screens flickered, alarms blared, and finally, silence. Project Viper was neutralized. When the dust settled, the desert sun had fully risen, casting gold across the ridges. Emily and Luke stood side by side, exhausted, rifles slung, faces smeared with dirt and sweat. He looked at her, eyes softening. "You've become everything I hoped you'd be. Strong, fearless, precise. You taught me," she said. "I just finished the lesson." He nodded, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Then, what now?" Emily looked out across the valley, feeling the weight of all the missions, all the orders, all the war that had come before. "Now we go home. And we stay alive, together." For the first time in 17 years, she saw the brother she had lost, a live, whole human. Major Cole's voice came through her comms, now unencrypted, but soft. "Carter." "Status?" Emily smiled faintly. "Mission complete. Rogue sniper neutralized, and the asset is secured. Ghost and Mirage accounted for." A pause. Then, surprisingly, a low chuckle. "You did good, Carter. Better than we could have imagined." She glanced at Luke. "Better than you imagined," she murmured. The desert wind blew, warm and calm. For once, there was no echo of gunfire, no tension, no orders. Just two siblings standing side by side, the world behind them in dust and shadow, the past reconciled, at least for now. Luke finally spoke, voice soft. "We still have a lot to explain." Emily laughed, a short, relieved sound. "And a lot to live for. But let's start with one step at a time." He nodded. Agreed. The sun climbed higher, burning gold across the dunes. The Barretts, their scars, their ghosts of the past, all lay behind them. For the first time, Emily felt lighter, freer. The desert no longer an enemy, but a witness to their survival. The war had taught her one ultimate truth. Precision, patience, and courage weren't just about bullets. They were about choices, the choice to protect, the choice to survive, and the choice to reclaim the life stolen from you. As they walked back toward their extraction point, rifles slung and side by side, Emily knew that no mission, no order, and no enemy could ever define her again. She was Ghost, she was Carter, and she had her brother back. The desert stretched endlessly before them, but for the first time, it felt like freedom. The end.